So, in coming from a conservative religious background, there were expectations of women. As I mentioned previously, women tend to fill the stereotypical gender roles, such as keeping house, raising children. While Carla did express, looking back at the years with very young children, as lonely ones, she doesn't seem to question whether it was her role, and there doesn't seem to be any level of resentment at that. Carla's religious upbringing has led her to be very reliant on her faith. The oh, whoops. All right. Carla's sheltered upbringing could have manifested in a much different result, being unaccustomed to spotlight as well as somewhat nervous of scrutiny, especially after struggling to adjust to unfamiliar surroundings and difficulty reading early on. Carla could have defaulted to what she knew and withdrawn. As a natural introvert, it would have been easy to hide fully behind her husband rather than assuming a leadership role beside him. She comes from a somewhat large religious family. None of the family members are particularly extroverted, and as they were immersed in the church, their social forces came from these types of institutions. Carla was directed, as was the rest of the family, by religious teachings and drew from her faith when encountering any new situations. While it is easy to develop a peaceful and quiet picture of what life is like growing up in the church, we also know that it can be a very judgmental, hypocritical force as well. Carla's fear of being in the public eye, I feel, is very valid, as there tends to be a lot of scrutinizing of others, both within the community and externally. Being a part of this type of community her whole life, Carla, of course, recognized this and hesitated to put herself in a watched position, but ultimately looked at her role as God's will and grew to become more comfortable and even enjoy a lot of what she needed to do in that leadership role. The other theory that I look to compare with generativity versus stagnation was the moral development theory. Piaget originally researched moral development, and Kohlberg later expanded upon the theory, breaking it into 3 levels with 6 stages. The stages begin in childhood and grow throughout the lifetime, although not all adults are expected to achieve the highest level. And this can be due to a multitude of factors, but likely mostly due to the differences in societal norms and cultures. It's difficult to determine whether an individual has achieved the highest level of moral development when the measurement is discretionary. In Carla's case, due to her devout religious background, someone within the church may ascertain that she has attained the highest level of moral reasoning, but this would likely be based on interpretation of religious doctrine. Someone else in society may disagree, as some religious views have become very controversial in today's society. Carla will likely be found to have achieved stage 3 or 4 in Kohlberg's moral development stages, as she would certainly be found to be of moral character and decision making, but not necessarily recognizing that there are different rights and wrongs, not necessarily within the teachings of the Bible. The limitations of this theory are, as I mentioned before, that stage achievement can be very discretionary. It's depending on the evaluator and the culture or society. Limitations on Erikson's stages of development are less, though. Erikson's stages do not rely as much on chronological age and what should be achieved, but social influences and where people are emotionally in any age window where a certain stage of development is typically occurring. Achievement of developmental stages is often in the emotional state of the individual. Questions that would determine this are such as do I measure up to my peers? Does my life or work have meaning? Are my relationships meaningful? And the answers to these questions are, often in the eye of the individual. Of course, an observer or a psychological professional can combine these answers to get a broader scope as to even what level of achievement or failure of a stage has been reached, but I found basically it's in the opinion of the person as to how they see their lives, not so much how I see their lives. So, if a person feels happy, if a person feels fulfilled, if a person feels like they've done all they wanted to do, whether they're a stay-at-home wife or an astronaut, they've achieved success in a stage of Erikson's theory. So thank you. I hope that you have enjoyed my little presentation. I found the experience very interesting in getting to know someone who I felt that I already did know a lot, but getting this additional little snapshot into her life and then applying it to these developmental stages was a very interesting exercise. Thanks.